Evcol.
The Interview by C. Edward Sellner.
Admittedly, it isn't my most congenial interview.
Bullshit, Miss Mizzou!
I intend to move forward with this story, with or without your corroboration, General Samuels. I just thought you might want to make sure it included your take.
If you had enough to verify this fantasy of a government black ops agency to deal with the things that go bump in the night, you wouldn't be darkening my doorstep. Unless, of course, you're planning to publish in one of those supermarket tabloid rags that carry most of your crackpot delusions, in which case you don't really need any facts at all, do you? How the hell did you even get into secure offices in the Pentagon?
Well, that's for me to know, and...
Security!
Well, let me just throw one little tidbit out for you, General. See how it lands. Killian Greaves.
Oh.
Well, that sounds like a confirmation.
You tread on very thin ice, Miss Mizzou. Be careful you don't get dragged under. Get her out of here.
And that's when I got unceremoniously dragged out of the Pentagon. But at least I now knew I had something truly big by the short hairs. Samuels is a certified war hero and a combat veteran, but that one name, praise Allah, that name is my jackpot. I'd certainly been digging long enough for it. Killian Greaves was a ghost. No public records of any kind. Officially, he didn't exist. Unofficially, there were stories and wild rumors, and they cost me 2 years of my life to track down the smallest tidbits and pieces. And then finally, a name to go with them. But as my escort walks me out of the door, I realize my day isn't over yet. 3 men in black were waiting outside.
Miss Massoud?
Well, you and I both know you don't need to ask. And I admit that was fast. So, what's next?
You've been granted an interview, but only if you accept the terms of getting you there. The location is classified. You'll have to be taken in under sedation.
Sedation? It's a bit much, don't you think? I mean, whatever happened to the old trusty blindfold trope? Now, my Baba didn't raise no fool, but still. Let's be honest. I'm half surprised they didn't grab me and throw me in the back of a van. So, an invitation to be drugged and whisked away to who knows where was a step up. And if I say no?
Then we let you go on your way.
This is insane to even consider putting myself helpless in their hands. This would be most women's worst nightmare. Still, I didn't want to admit how desperate I was. This story had consumed my whole life. I realized I was afraid to admit how much finding out the truth had come to mean to me. And just how much I'm willing to do to prove it. So in the end, I guess there really was no other choice. Lead the way. Where am I?
Give it a moment. Give it a moment. The headache and blurry vision will pass quickly.
I finally blinked my eyes open, and clear enough to see I was in some kind of posh executive office, fairly large, filled with fancy furniture, and a bunch of display cases filled with stone tablets with carved ruins, ancient text, and manuscripts, odd weapons, and a few skulls from animals I doubt were ever listed in any zoological guide. And then I saw him. And, well, I know I sounded a bit surprised to the 4.5-foot man in front of me. Killian Greaves?
I'm assuming you're expecting someone taller. I assure you, Miss Mazood, I am Killian Greaves. And I have to say, you have been no end of trouble for me.
Well, I'm glad to hear it.
Ah, yes, that's the spirit. Here, have a bottle of water. I'm sure you're thirsty after your nap. I'd offer you something more enticing to drink, but I know you abstain.
So, you know about me?
Oh, I know a great many things about you. Family from Pakistan, but you were born and raised in Bay Ridge, also known as Little Palestine, a nice little neighborhood in Brooklyn. Attended mosque at Masjid al-Rahman and went to PS 264 Bay Ridge Elementary School for the Arts as a child. Graduated top of your class from King's College, majoring in journalism. Worked for the New York Times, then later for the Washington Post, as well as a stringer for the Associated Press. You were charting to be one of the best investigative reporters of this generation before you were pretty much dismissed from the serious news outlets for your rather preposterous investigations into topics better fit for the tabloids. Such a shame.
Says the guy in charge of all that sort of thing.
Touché.
Well, it's nice to see our tax dollars for super-rich spy organizations going to such important use. Well, you clearly have me at a disadvantage, so how about evening the scales?
Sure. What would you like to know?
Everything.
Well, that could take a while. Let's start with the most basic. I should officially welcome you to Guardian. Global Unified Armed Response Division Intelligence Acquisition Network. What does that tell you?
That someone really wanted it called Guardian. And that, like most Black Ops agencies, your name makes it clear you shoot first and ask questions later.
Well, we were going for the Guardian thing. But you make another valid point. You've heard of us.
Rumors, wild stories, all about a top-secret, off-the-books Black Ops agency specially tasked with the things no other agency is equipped to handle, from extraterrestrial to supernatural, incorporating everything from Area 51 to Project Blue Book, the Stargate Project, and MK Ultra to your dapper Men in Black. I mean, some of those stories even paint you as a modern-day Illuminati.
Well, I don't know about that last part. But yes, the rest is all true. Each of those were projects coordinated under our jurisdiction. Some in conjunction with the military, others with various intelligence agencies. But ultimately, all ours.
Well, that was pretty easy. Most of those included some pretty shady and controversial stuff.
Yes, they did. Our line of work is not one easily explained, justified, or understood. But I assure you, it is very necessary. Oh, come now. You've done your homework. You know the types of threats we deal with.
Ones most would deny even existed?
I'd say that means we're doing an excellent job, wouldn't you say?
The stories I've heard include a lot of crazy things. Impossible things. There's a reason the major news outlets have rejected most of my efforts to expose this. They sound insane. Terrifying, if true, but insane.
And yet you kept digging. Why is that?
I trust my gut. And my gut was saying there was more to this than some kind of mass hysteria or overworked rumor mill among the conspiracy buffs.
And so you found me. And now?
I know you. This agency, Guardian, exists. But that still doesn't confirm any of the details beyond that. In fact, it raises a heck of a lot more questions.
I'm not sure what you actually expected, Miss Mazood. The work we do here is classified at the highest levels. There aren't a dozen people in the entire U.S. government and military not directly in my employ that even know Guardian exists.
Yet you brought me here.
Yes, I did. Some might say against my better judgment. But the honest truth is, despite your current reputation, you're exceedingly good at your job and maddeningly persistent. You've been a thorn in my side since you began this little crusade. You have learned things no one else in your profession has come close to. Like my name, one of the most closely guarded secrets of this entire operation. Yet, there you were, babbling it to military officials, leaving me little choice but to do something.
And what do you intend to do, Mr. Greaves?
I haven't yet decided. What do you think I should do?
I think I might be biased.
Aren't we all?
Well, I would recognize that eventually every secret comes to light. That people have a right to know about the threats you face out there. They have a right to know there is so much more to the world than most people suspect. And eventually they will find out, so perhaps they're ready to know now. Maybe it would be best to get ahead of it and control how that information goes out.
I know your investigations have given you insight into the threats we face. Do you honestly believe that people are ready to learn those truths?
People deserve to know.
Oh, please. Come off the moralistic soapbox of absolutes. Let's be honest with each other, shall we? What do you honestly think would happen if the world learned about Guardian and what we do?
We live in an ever-changing world. Science is advancing radical new ideas, new revelations about everything from quantum mechanics to astrophysics. Technology is changing so fast that we can barely keep up. People live in that world. They see new possibilities and new understandings all the time.
Yes, but no one is going to be afraid of exoplanets, quantum entanglement, or electric cars. Well, except for maybe the oil and gas industry. Besides, it's not the informed truth seekers I'm worried most about, Miss Mazood. It's the mobs. It's the people convinced the Earth is flat, or that it is immune to being pumped full of poison, who disavow science and nominate imbeciles to the highest offices, or feel the need to arm themselves with assault weapons to go shopping that concerns me. I believe you're old enough to remember how those mobs responded to 9/11. How they still often treat anyone of your persuasion, even today, over 20 years later. I'm sorry. I overstepped. I know your father was a victim of those attacks. But I think you see my point. That response is nothing new. The Nazis, the Armenian genocide, the Salem witch trials, human slavery, the massacre of Native Americans, the Crusades. Human history is overflowing with piss-poor examples of how we handle one another, much less anyone or anything we deem other.
There have always been those who respond out of fear.
And hatred. And that fear and hatred they have now, how much more do you think it will multiply with the knowledge that there are far older, more powerful, and more deadly things in the world, and beyond it, than anything they ever imagined? I'm thinking it would be exponential, like dumping napalm on a campfire. And those are the woefully ignorant. Then, of course, there are the principled and compassionate people like yourself, who strive for higher goals, dedicate their lives to making a difference, and try to right the wrongs of the world. Yet most of you find the majority of your time bogged down in pushing past the resistance to your efforts, of fighting off the naysayers, or slogging through the bureaucratic red tape of a society weighed down with its own inertia. How's that working out for you, Miss Mazood? I would think you've seen more than your fill of those who claim to seek the truth in your profession, but who dismiss everything you've brought to light, even with corroboration, even with tangential evidence that should at least spark greater efforts. And look at where that's brought you.
And how much of that do I owe to you?
Believe it or not, I had nothing to do with it. I didn't need to. Oh, please, I'm not claiming innocence, nor even humility. I've brought down plenty of very powerful people, Miss Mazood, often for far less than the problems you have caused me. If I had ruined your life, don't think I'm too big a man not to rub it in your face. I think you overestimate the quality of the human condition. People don't always want to know the truth, Miss Mazood. They want to know and be assured of their truths. You see, that's the simplest part of keeping our work secret. People don't want to know. They, all on their own, dismiss anything and everything that doesn't nicely fit their views of reality. It makes our job much easier.
But with verified statements from those involved, physical evidence, like any number of your little trophy displays, they would have to face the facts.
Because facts always win the day. I know you aren't naive enough to believe that in this day and age. You must believe me when I say that there are balances of power and order in this world. ones that are critical to our very survival, to Earth's very survival. Guardian maintains those balances, and it is a near impossible task as it is. Imagine the chaos. Imagine millions of individuals pushing at those balances based on their own fears. Imagine hundreds, if not thousands, of extremists and militia groups reacting with their paranoia and rage. Now imagine how governments that seem ill-equipped to deal with the most basic needs of their citizens, and in constant conflict with others, deal with this knowledge.
Are you saying the Guardian doesn't use the same tactics? Never uses violence or aggression?
Of course not. Don't be naive. But are you wise enough to know the difference in effectiveness between a scalpel wielded by an accomplished surgeon and a sledgehammer swung by an idiot?
These balances. What would happen if they were tilted?
Worst case scenario? Extinction of all life on this planet.
I feel a pit open up in my stomach. My first response is to laugh in his face. But he believes what he says. Believes it to the core. I can see it in his eyes, in the lines in his face. There is a glimpse there, a glimpse in those dark eyes of a man walking an endless tightrope, knowing one misstep could cost everyone everything. The glimpse of a man far older than he appears, who has been walking that tightrope for so long that it has become all he knows.
What? No follow-up question? No pressing the issue? Come now, Miss Masood. Where's that intrepid investigative reporter that so impressed me with her determination to uncover the truth? Ah, could it be that even you aren't sure you want to know the whole truth? That the idea of knowing the intimate details of how humanity lives on a razor's edge of survival every day might turn your life and all its wondrous convictions upside down?
You made your point, Greaves. All of these displays, these artifacts, are these your trophies?
I consider them more my talismans, my anchor points, to constantly remind me there is far more to the world than even I suspect.
Awfully reflective for someone in your position. I'm assuming they all have stories?
Yes, stories of power never meant to be held by human hands, or horrors unleashed. All have their own stories behind them, and reasons for them being here. We keep these items here to keep them safe.
I'm sure that's your justification.
What do you mean by that?
But it also, if true, conveniently puts all this power in your hands.
Yes, that it does.
So if they are so dangerous, why not destroy these artifacts? Remove them from the equation, end the threats they pose.
Trust me, Miss Masood. We are more than able and willing to remove clear and present threats from the equation. But when you stand as the first and only line of defense against the unknown, you also want to ensure you stack the odds as much in your favor as possible. We mostly rely on our own traditional forces, grouped by divisions. The Spear, Air Division. Trident, Naval. Sword, Armed Forces. Shield, our Heavy Armor Division. All run through here. The Helm, our command center, where we keep our various aces in the hole.
No doubt the most secret location on Earth.
Oh, I didn't say that. We designate our ranks and offices by chess pieces. Pawns as our tech and intelligence. Knights for field agents. Bishops as field commanders. Rooks as base commanders. And various worldwide divisions overseen by kings and queens, with myself being the White King.
Well, that's not a loaded title at all. Tell me more. He takes the invitation and begins rattling off the scope and scale of the agency. All stuff I absolutely should not know. I take advantage of the monologue to do more processing. I've been getting increasingly concerned through this interview. Greaves is far too open, far too chatty for my taste. Oh, the reporter part of me loves the affirmation. Everything I suspected and so much more is true. But everything he's told me so far, any single piece of it, would blow the lid wide on this entire organization. Granted, I had no proof of anything. Most of it, no one sane would believe me if I told them. Still, that little voice in the back of my head was shouting a red alert. What if he were telling me all this because he knew I'd never have the chance to do anything about it?
All right, enough dancing around the elephant in the room. Earlier, when I asked you what you were going to do about me, you asked me what I thought you should do. Then we got sidetracked. You've admitted you have zero desire to see your agency put in the public spotlight. You've made the argument on several fronts that everything you've shown me, a reporter, needs to stay top secret. Admittedly, you've made some decent points as to why, which then really raises a pressing question for me. Why am I here? Am I going to be able to leave here still breathing? Because frankly, at this point, the only reason I can think of that you've offered me this little interview isn't for an actual story, but as a consolation prize for knowing that I was right about everything before you kill me.
I'm sorry, Miss Mazood. You seem to be operating under a misunderstanding, one exacerbated by the fact I've not been totally honest with you. This was never an interview for a story. No. It was a job interview.
A job interview? For what?
I've been doing this an exceptionally long time, and I know how to deal with all the wonderful and horrible things we've kept secret in the world. But I don't know how to deal with what's happening in the world right now, and I'm afraid I'm going to have to at some point.
Things like what?
Don't tell me you haven't noticed. The growing resurgence of nationalism and fascism across the globe, multiple coups and coup attempts from Yemen, Zimbabwe, and Turkey, right up to that farce in the United States last year. White supremacists, extremists, hate groups, and militias are thriving and coming out of their homemade bunkers, no longer waiting for the end of the world, but intent on speeding it along. Unchecked climate change leading to increasingly worse natural disasters. War and terrorism, especially homegrown terrorism, are on the rise. Humanity is reaching a boiling point, and who knows what will happen when they hit it. All of that, I don't know how to handle. It's never been part of my mandate in the past, but I'm afraid it's becoming impossible to ignore.
What are you saying? Are you planning to start overthrowing governments or hunting down private citizens you feel have overstepped?
Earlier, I mentioned a precarious balance that must be maintained for our collective survival.
Yes, your prime justification for keeping everything secret, so we don't upset the proverbial apple cart.
Yes, but here's the crux of the problem. Humans are already tilting that precarious balance. We are already proving to be a greater threat to ourselves and everything else, far more than I, and more importantly certain others, ever anticipated. It does not go unnoticed. And humans do not hold a monopoly on sometimes deciding to eradicate potential threats.
So these powers you allude to, the far older, far more dangerous, we're making them nervous with our little temper tantrums as a species? So what does this have to do with me?
You impress me, and few people do. You are one of the most principled, determined, and smartest people I've ever come across. And I've come across the best as well as the worst in this line of work.
Thank you, but I'm still not sure how any of that qualifies me to work for you.
Not for me, with me.
In informing the world about your operations.
Eventually. Oh, don't look so surprised. You were right. Every secret eventually comes into the light, and I am very well aware that within the next few years, Guardian will be forced to do just that. It's inevitable, given the direction things are going.
Well, what do you need from me in the here and now?
I need a white queen, an equal, someone to consult with and advise me, especially on matters dealing with the human side of the equation. I need someone with the conviction to challenge me, in private. To put the hard questions to me about my choices, the life and death decisions I make every day. I need a different perspective, one well-versed in the best and worst of the world not hidden in the shadows. Someone who believes in higher principles, but also understands the way the world works. The other kings and queens sometimes fill this role when dealing with their domains, but I need someone here, by my side, to do it all the time.
Even when you don't want that advice?
Especially then, but someone who can speak their mind, make their point, but then recognize that it will still be me making the decisions.
Why now?
Because, as I said, the most pressing issues for me right now are how human society politically, socially, publicly seems intent on tail-spinning the world into chaos. Chaos, I have every reason to believe, might be the catalyst to a horror unlike anything the world has ever seen, all within the next decade.
And someone uniquely suited to spin control when the secret does come out.
That was the final selling point. Your work deserves a chance at recognition. If the day comes when the world must know about Guardian, it should come from you. You're the only one who's ever earned it.
Flatterer.
Will you be my White Queen?
I am so not going to be called that, but...
Come.
Sir, sensors are detecting a spatial temporal anomaly coming from Central Park. We've dispatched a night unit.
Can we identify it?
Well, Com has matched it, frequency and type, as well as the exact same location from a similar event in 1991.
Well, are you coming or not?
So where are we anyway? Close to New York?
Relatively speaking.
I step through and stop dead as he glares back with a laugh and continues on. We stand in a massive tiered command center with the most advanced technology I've ever seen. Then my eyes drift to the largest view filling the wall to the left, and I feel myself nearly pass out.
Tell me that shot of Earth from orbit is a satellite feed?
That's our front window.
Dear Jannah. Oh, this is going to take some getting used to.
This was an Evcol Entertainment Clockwork Digital Studios original production, a part of the On Another Wavelength audio anthology series, featuring the voice talents of Will Harrison-Wallace, Mitch Howell, Deeivya Meir, and Chris Machari. Written by C. Edward Sellner, directed and produced by Simon James Collier, series created and co-produced by Dechanel. Soundscape design by Zachary Elliott-Hatton.